Hey everybody, welcome to Surface Level, curious conversations about the Black and queer experience. I'm one of your hosts, Jordan, and today, Damon Tony and I are discussing how gender roles impact our attitudes towards our hair, clothing, and beauty. Today we're going to be celebrating Sylvester. Sylvester is an iconic disco artist.
You make me feel mighty real.
That's enough.
Like, it's not a conversation. Wear whatever the fuck you want to wear. I would love for us to get to that place.
Everything we've been taught by our families has been steeped in this standard, like this expectation of what it means to be masculine.
A skirt's a skirt no matter who's wearing it. It may be a non-binary person in a skirt. It may be a bigot in a skirt. But like the goal with the skirt is for it to just be people in the skirt.
It's an individual choice at the end of the day that we get to decide as human beings on this earth. And where we get caught up is on what other people think.
This is Beautiful Gowns Part 2. All right, so we're back.
And we're back.
We're back.
We're back to
From
talk
outer space.
about all things non-gender conforming expression through our hair, clothes.
Yeah.
Does anybody have on makeup today?
You?
No,
don't
I just
wanna
look
wear
like
makeup?
like this, honey.
That's what you all think. That's what y'all think.
The lies.
Well, listen, okay? So by now we all know that this season is themed around reflecting on the icons who have paved the way for the queer community today. And today we're going to be celebrating Sylvester.
Work.
So Sylvester is an iconic disco artist from the late 70s, early 80s. And you probably most likely have heard his hit song, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real.
Which Tony will perform for us now.
Oh, absolutely.
You make me feel
Keep going.
mighty real.
That's
All
enough.
right now.
No, that's enough.
No, that's right. Listen, and Sylvester was known for that falsetto.
Listen,
okay, that
The
falsetto
video
was
cunt, honey.
okay, and
Cunt.
that was another part of the artistry is that Sylvester was not only openly gay, which was a rarity in the late 70s, early 80s. He also wore makeup and
Wigs.
non-gender conforming clothing and wigs, and we lived for it.
Right.
We absolutely lived for it, and has paved the way for artists today who get on stage and also embrace non-conforming gender expression.
Yeah.
So very excited to have this conversation in celebration of his life and legacy.
Yeah.
And so let's play a little game.
Okay.
Okay. So Sylvester's hit song, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, is about the intense joy that you experience on the dance floor. Based on our previous international trips, what club scenes were more fun? Barcelona, Spain, or Berlin, Germany? And why?
I had fun at both for different reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Berlin, I'm giving very Berlin today. Like,
You
this is what I would
are.
give.
You're gonna look-
Androgynous. Androgynous.
She's Grace Jones, honey.
Very, you don't know what I am.
Hello?
And I like that.
Yes.
To keep the
okay.
girls guessing on their toes. So Berlin gave me that, and Barcelona gave me,
Fun in the sun.
because you know what? And Berlin is mostly a white aesthetic, you know, and Barcelona, you had your little bit of flavor. That's where
Because
the
we was hanging out with some other people from Harlem.
you had
That
you
part.
had
we found
the meat and potatoes,
Oh.
the paella.
I loved Berlin. They're like my two favorite cities in Europe. So like
Berlin's
I go to
grunge.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Both and.
Okay. Both and. Okay. I would pick Berlin. That club scene was like a movie. It
It
plays in my
was.
mind.
It
And I'm just
was.
like, wow, we were really there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I remembered more. All right. So Sylvester was known obviously for his non-gender conforming expression. Thinking back on our previous experiences with non-gender forming expression, what brought you more joy? The photo shoot for the masculine sissy episode or getting dressed for Sailor Moon for Halloween?
Oh, Sailor Moon was so fun. And the girls went up. Went up. Like, did we have a more liked picture on Instagram? The girls went up for that Sailor Moon, and I had so much fun until I was coming home from the afters at 8:30 in the morning. The sun was high in the sky, and this one had gone home with my fucking shorts that I was going to change into, and I'm still traipsing into that.
Had on your schoolgirl
into that, and then that outfit with them space buttons in my hair. Then I was like, "This is enough." But that was fun because also I feel like the things from that shoot I just wear as normal clothes now.
That's true. We're gonna have to pull that photo up for the listeners. You need to go on YouTube and look at the little overlay of that photo shoot.
Yeah, what I had on at the masculine sissy shoot is what I would wear in Berlin. I had on a black skirt and a crop top black moment. It was very much,
What are we doing?
This
is the geometrical.
You doing the robot?
It gave me. I felt like on Street Fighter or something like that.
Oh,
yeah. That's what I felt. But the Sailor Moon moment, that was a in real life situation. Like Masculine Sissy, we were in the studio, just us. Sailor Moon, we were in public.
Yeah,
and people, they did kind of fawn over the three of us in these costumes, and we've never done something like that. I've never gone out of the house.
I've been trying to get these
like
girls
that.
to do a joint Halloween costume for maybe a decade.
You were very persistent this year, and it didn't happen.
I literally had to order the things to my house. Have everybody over. Put it on. Put the dress on, Jordan.
I was quiet in that group chat. I was just like, I'm not adding no fuel to this flame. If we do it, it's going to be by hook and crook.
It was by hook or crook.
All right. Last question. Sylvester was born and raised in Los Angeles, but ultimately settled in San Francisco.
Okay.
If you had a choice, which city would you rather live in?
Oh, Los Angeles.
Neither nor.
Yeah, San Francisco. I went and
what was it giving?
Well, the thing about San Francisco, I can go across the bridge.
I was like, you been to Oakland?
To Oakland, where the black girls are.
Like
that might be.
Yeah,
because it's literally a stone's throw away. But I don't. When I've been to either, I'm just like, there's not a lot of. I won't say there's not culture, because there is. You got to find it, but I like when
you just walk out your house in New York and you'd be like, and now I'm at a festival. How do we get here? Don't know.
Yeah, it's more accessible in a city. But if I had to choose between those two, I think I would probably go for an LA vibe more than San Francisco, honestly. And the weather in San Francisco is god awful.
The weather is strange.
God awful.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really get warm. It's always kind of like
cold.
Fall.
Foggy.
But not like cute fall.
No. Like fog.
Smog. No, I'm kidding.
What about you?
Neither and nor.
Neither nor?
I hate those cities.
Oh, goodness. Well, which one do you hate least? Less?
Yeah.
LA, I guess.
Oh, okay. Damon said this question is a non-starter.
It's a terrible question.
I'm bored.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will have to do, I think LA. Both of them feel like I would struggle personally, but I think I would struggle less in LA because I feel like I know a couple people that I can maybe call up for a lunch or something like that. All right, well, let's get in this conversation.
Let's do it.
I want to start off with talking about our community, the Black community, and not just queer specific. But I'm curious why you think there is resistance to men experimenting with non-gender conforming expression. Damon, let's start with you.
Yeah, no, as I was prepping and like thinking about this conversation, I was thinking a lot about the work of Alec Vade Menon. They're a non-binary trans person, and love their work. And one of the things they've said, and they have a book called Beyond the Gender Binary, one of the things they said, that we've been taught to fear the very things that have the potential to set us free. And I think so much about respectability. And this idea particularly with Black men, where we've like come from this idea that you have to be strong, and if you are not strong, then you are not caring for your family, and you are not therefore the best example of like what a strong Black man should be. You think about all of the organizations that exist, like 100 Black Men, or like Black fraternities, or like if you're at Howard, even just like you're not in an organization, in the School of Business, like you wear your black suit, and like you're this like very traditional thing that projects strength and projects in some way respectability. And from that, I think it's like ingrained into us to then fear coloring outside those lines.
Yeah.
It becomes this thing where there's this level of shame attached to it because it's not giving what society has said the ideal is. Like, I think we were having an interesting conversation with Raquel this season, just around the expectations of a father, or the expectations of men around us. And when that expectation is so ingrained in respectability and wanting other people to like us and feel like we are the ideal of manhood, like what does that do to your psyche? Like there's this place, again, going back to Alaka and their work, around where like shame and like your reality is kind of merge in a way that like you've taken so much of it in that like you can't even tell the difference between what you are and are not. Tony?
Yeah. I think that when it comes to, and we're talking about just Black men, right? And not queer Black men, but just Black men
across
full stop.
So for when I think about that, I'm thinking about the resistance being heteronormative masculinity. And the fact that everything we've been taught by society, everything we've been taught by our families has been steeped in this standard, like this expectation of what it means to be masculine as a Black man. And, you know, masculinity seems to be very fragile. It's something that I think folks when Black men haven't been able to really express the softer parts of themselves. And so they don't know what to do with someone who is resistant to that, resistant to the status quo. And I think that there's a lot of undealt with trauma that comes into play when you think about why Black men resist that and what they've been told from a child. Like as I think we've all realized that as we've come into adulthood, a lot of our traumas are things that we faced as children that has shaped us, things that we've been taught, comments made by family, by friends, by society on how we should be, how we should move. And that sort of shapes, you know, our whole ideal of how we should carry ourselves. And so when it relates to trauma, I found an interesting study. The National Library of Medicine conducted a study on Black males, trauma, and mental health. It said that rates for trauma exposure among Black males across studies varied by type of traumatic events that included physical abuse and assault at 52%, sexual abuse 37%, serious accident injury 52%, death of a loved one, which is interesting, 59%, domestic abuse 24%, emotional abuse 62%, and just witnessing trauma 39%. And that last one there, when it comes to witnessing trauma, it's like the age-old story of seeing the Black female figure, mother figure being beaten on or what have you, or sexual trauma. Maybe you're witnessing something like that as a child. Like all of these things can affect your resistance to seeing something that you feel is not normal, when in reality it's very normal, but you're taught otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I also think about just my experience growing up and feeling like, and this is why I wanted to have a conversation around like Black men specifically, because I felt coming up it was completely acceptable, or not completely acceptable. Sorry, let me correct myself. It was more acceptable for a young Black girl, to experiment with maybe like more traditionally boyish clothing,
Mm.
or maybe participate in sports that maybe are reserved more so for boys, and they get the brand of tomboy. You know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have any sort of inclination to their sexuality.
Mhm.
Whereas a boy, you know, wants to wear something pink, wants to, you know, be maybe wants to do something more creative as opposed to athletic. There's a
Yeah.
question about sexuality
Mhm.
immediately. And I think also once you know that there's a question about your sexuality
Mhm.
based off of how you express yourself or how you choose to express yourself, and then you can physically see how the community around you treats gay people, I think that psychologically makes you feel like, okay, no, like I can't even express myself like
Right.
that, because then that puts me in that bucket, and it puts me in a line of fire to be attacked. And I
Well,
think
that's the earliest form of when you don't even know something's wrong yet.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I don't want to even put it that way to say that it's wrong.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's just like when you're taught from others, like that ain't right. You don't do that. Boys don't do this. Boys.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Uncross your legs.
right. Those
Right.
are the earliest.
Don't break your wrist.
The earliest. That's
Like
when
this,
like
like the seeds of trauma.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is
and we pass it on, and we believe it, and we become we carry out the
Yeah.
trauma and put it on
You
other
pass it
people
on to
too.
the next generation.
Yeah.
absolutely. The next question we have is, how do we respond to the argument that certain forms of gender expression may perpetuate stereotypes and hinder progress in gaining societal acceptance?
I mean, I think my first question, because I've heard this argument, right? I think that we all
This
have,
is very
like,
tricky.
someone sees someone with a very big platform,
Yeah.
and they choose. Maybe it's a guy, and they choose to wear a dress or something like that, and then you
Right.
hear this rhetoric around, like, oh my goodness, like they're like distracting our movement to be accepted as gay people because they're doing
They're
this.
pushing the
And I think my response to queer people who have that rhetoric is, do you believe that non-gender conforming expression is bad? And I
Mhm.
think that if your answer is yes, I think your next course of action is to investigate that.
Right.
And also understand why you feel like, as a queer person,
Mhm.
why aren't you able to process the fact that somebody may be genderqueer?
Mhm.
And so that would be my first line of questioning. If I asked you, do you think that non-conforming gender expression is wrong, and you say no, then I would say, then why do you feel like them leaning into who they are is a threat to you being able to be who you are?
Right.
Because I think ultimately what happens is that, sure, yes, this might be a person with a big platform, and there may be a lot of noise from people who have hatred towards the community that are using their platform to say hateful stuff. But we're all in this fight together. When non-gender conforming people win, the cis, straight passing person wins as well.
Mhm.
Like, when our most marginalized members of the community are able to find progress, we all win. And so that would be my response to that, is just really understand, like, what are you fighting for, and what is the true threat that you see in this?
Yeah. I think my answer comes into questioning the question, and I'm saying, what is your progress?
Mhm.
Like, is your progress just upholding a patriarchal, violent system towards people that color outside of the lines of that system? Then, like, it's not really progress at all.
Mhm.
Not. It's not. Like, you cannot, and to the point Tony was saying in a previous episode, none of us are free until all of us are free. So, like, you can't say that you are for the liberation of certain people if you're not for the liberation of all people. And you cannot call something progress if it is not progress for all people. And to me, it's simply that. Nothing more, nothing less, full stop.
Yeah, I almost had a similar reaction to this question when it talks about perpetuating stereotypes that hinder the progress to gaining societal acceptance. And I ask, whose
accepting me into what?
Right.
Whose acceptance
Oh.
are you trying to get? And
Right.
therein lies the problem for me, because it's
Mhm.
like you're searching for validation from whom?
Right.
And who gets to dictate, like, this is the handbook
Right.
on how one should navigate and express themselves. And that, to me, is kind of where I think the root of the issue is. And I also think, just even when the question, like, certain forms of gender expression perpetuating stereotypes, I'm like, is this question inherently femphobic?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like, what are the certain types of expressions that we're talking about here?
Right.
We're not talking about Jordan dressed how he is, or even Damon dressed how we're talking about the girls who are giving,
Right.
that's what's at question. And why is that at question? And so I think we need to check our desire to want to be accepted by the societal standard that, I still question. Well, I don't know if I question it, but I'm like, it's not created for folks to live freely and express themselves how they'd like to. So yeah, I mean, it's a really,
I mean, it's the same people who are fighting for, and I'm just gonna make it very plain in my example. Like, when I think about this question, I'm thinking about like cisgendered gay men who may have an issue with genderqueer people in the community. And it's like those same people will go out and say that we need our rights as gay people, and we're tired of being marginalized and disrespected. But if your advocacy stops there and you say, okay, well, we have what's going on here and things are going well for us, and like straight people are finally putting some respect on us, what you're doing is too much. We actually need you to stop. It's like, it's wild, and it's actually incredibly pervasive. It happens so often. Like, how many times have Little Nas X is a perfect example of an artist who ascended to some of the most high levels of commercial success in pop music, and initially came to the fame presenting as a cisgendered heteronormative aesthetic, and then began to feel more comfortable in his skin and experiment with other forms of expression. And the same gay people that were so excited that he used his platform to come out and talk about his queerness and be open were the same people that were just like, why are you wearing this in the performance? Like, this is like too much. Like, why are you doing this? And yeah, it's nasty work, because then we have to check our own bigotry within the community.
Yeah, it really sucks when people want you to tone down what you're doing or the way you're expressing yourself, because they're saying it's a distraction. And now we become part of, I don't know.
I mean, it's the thing that it goes back to me always to just the topic of assimilation, and why, like, in any industry, I just find it to be one of the like worst things that you can do to yourself. Any space that requires you, and I always go back to the quote, to change your who and not your where, is a place like, do you want to be there? Like, are those the people you want to be around? Is that the community that is surrounding yourself with? Is that a community that they need to do some more work? Because the work is not on you to dim the light of that is truest to you.
Yeah. Whew. I mean, we can talk about this for a long time, I think. And I think that there's a lot of chatter around this particular topic that I feel our insiders will go back and we'll be continuing this conversation. We were talking about straight folks and queer, non-queer folks. And I want to pose this question to the group. How do we feel about both queer and non-queer male entertainers who may be engaging in genderqueer expression simply for attention or for personal gain? Is that icky to you? Is that okay? Does it matter whether you're queer, whether you're not queer, if you're getting attention on, leaning into gender queer expression or using it for gain? Like, that's
So
It's a doozy.
my opinion on this is evolving. I think the last time that we talked about this, I think that I remember noting Young Thug, and the fact that his album cover, he's wearing a dress. But you can look at his lyrics and he uses derogatory terms to talk about the queer community.
Interesting.
That is a non-starter for me because you know that gender queerness is something that will give you headlines, especially if you're a popular artist or you're an entertainer with a platform. Like, people are going to click on that content and engage with it. Positive, negative, indifferent. It's going to give you what you want if you're seeking attention. I don't fuck with that.
Yeah.
I've loosened up my expectation around people who maybe are not queer in terms of their sexuality, but maybe, are like, you know what, I'm going to switch it up and wear a skirt, and I'm going to switch it up and wear a dress. I've loosened up that because I think in the past I was just like, it needs to come in, like, in addition to advocacy, explicit advocacy. And I think I've loosened it up a bit. And the only reason why is because I also think that it's important that people see straight men experimenting with gender. I think that, and I don't think that everybody has the range to be the spokesperson for, what that means for the broader community. I would like them to. I would like people to adopt a Bad Bunny, Dennis Rodman sort of approach where you express yourself in this way and you also have a thought behind it that leads to a greater cause for this marginalized group. But I do think that it's important that we're seeing it and that we're normalizing it. And so in that sense, I've kind of loosened up on it a little bit, but I think hate speech is an absolute non-starter, obviously.
Yeah, another artist that comes to mind is Harry Styles for me, because he's someone who I think leans into genderqueer expression while being an heterosexual. I think he identifies as heterosexual. And there's been a lot of chatter around that too. But it doesn't feel, I don't know if it's been as polarizing, and maybe it's because he's white.
Loves a twink.
And a white twink. So I don't know, but I also don't think he's doing it for attention, and I don't think he's doing it for financial gain. I think he's just doing him, and he likes to dress how he likes to dress. I don't know. I don't know Harry Styles.
Harry, if you're listening, Tony.
Harry, if you're listening, come sit at the table.
I kind of disagree on this. And I think because in this conversation, it's like we're defining clothing as gendered. And I think the reality is that, like, for me, the more important thing to do is to degender, like, the constructs of the things we build. Like, pants are pants, skirts are skirts, dresses are dresses. Like, we prescribed them to women or to people who who live outside of the gender binary. But that doesn't mean that, like, that's the ownership for these things. I think the whole point of the conversation is to say that, like, a skirt's a skirt no matter who's wearing it. It may be a non-binary person in a skirt. It may be a bigot in a skirt. But, like, the goal with the skirt is for it to just be people in the skirt. And I think that's the place where I'm at now, or, like, in this singular moment when I'm thinking about this, and just saying, like, particularly when we think about the effect we put on, like, that's more what the conversation is talking about: the clothing, the makeup, the hair, the wig, the heel, like the effect, like
drag.
Yeah, the drag. Like when we put that on, like, that to me is not inherently linked to, like, the gender identity of a person. And I think that we could maybe, like, I sometimes maybe, like, I feel like we try and make everything precious and everything so sacred. I'm just like nobody asked, like, you or I why, like, we were wearing a sweatshirt and, like, are we being like kind to like straight men who are used to like we think about wearing sweatshirts. Like like everything doesn't have to be like a protest. And like I'm a protesting ass bitch, but like sometimes I just feel like are we taking everything, like are we splitting the hairs too far where we make every person have to feel like they're either an activist or like even we make people who experiment with non-traditional quote clothing normally, like we make them feel like they're doing some active resurgence. I was watching
that tore you up.
No, I was watching the two women that are on Rap Shit that were on the Tamron Hall show being interviewed, and the light skinned girl who's a little full of figured. They were asking her. She was like, people always ask like, how does it feel to see a woman of this size on like a show? She was like, I don't walk through my life like I'm a big girl, I'm a big girl, I'm a big girl, I'm a big girl with every step, and it makes me think about this. Like I don't think that like most of the girls that's just putting it on, they're not going like skirt, 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 skirt. Like, and I think that we sometimes make people who dress like that into that.
Yeah.
And I think that like that's kind of the flaw for me sometimes in that conversation, where you become like, I'm heels, skirt, skirt. And I'm like, I don't know, heels, skirt, skirt. I'm just a person.
That sounds like that song about what's the name?
Oh, no, we not. I started saying it. I was like, she about to, yeah. But
so yes, I don't think that everybody, like I do think that it's important for us to normalize it, and for it to be less of a ordeal when it happens. I guess my my concern is still the intention and the attitudes towards the community.
Yeah.
Because I think that the reality is that people who actually live it day to day and don't treat it like, drag for, an event or drag for a promotional run. They're living with real life discrimination and hardship. And I guess it's, for me, it becomes like an eyebrow raise when I'm seeing people who are just like, oh, okay, like I see the selfish benefit and the selfish gain that I can get from this.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to pursue that while also not even necessarily changing my outlook on maybe problematic views that I have towards that community.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like and it's hard to tell, right? Unless somebody explicitly comes out and say, I don't fuck with that. Right. And I don't care. I'm still going to wear the dress because like I need to move these album units. But like I get what you mean about not being precious and normalizing it and just making it so that like it's not a conversation. Wear whatever the fuck you want to wear. I would love for us to get to that place. I'm just like curious about the ones who are doing it with impure intentions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit of this, and it's no shade to where you work, Jordan, but the TikTok culture. Like, there's a lot of cisgendered heterosexual folks who are playing into genderqueer activity, notion, what have you, for clout, for views. And that's the shit that makes my dick soft.
Oh,
like that's when I'm like really turned off by it, because it's like, you don't even know why you're doing this. You're doing it because it's trending on social media. You have no idea what you're doing, and that grinds my gears, because you don't get to be gay for a day. Like, everybody wants to participate in the thing until it comes down to actually being the thing. Like, when people say like everybody want to be black until it comes down to actually being black and having to face some real shit. And so I have a hard time with that.
Are we conflating people pretending to be queer with people that are expressing themselves through clothing, through hair, through makeup, outside of what the traditional binary is, who have nothing to do with queerness
Well,
as a human being. Like, you know what I mean?
but I think that if you're doing that just to follow a trend, because it's, that it's still sort of the same response for me. It's like if you're leaning into genderqueer expression for the sake of attention and for the sake of monetary gain of some sort, I have a problem with that.
I mean, but that's every influencer. Like, you could take everything and be like, all people are trying to do is get attention on the internet.
I have a problem with that.
Well, I have a big problem with that.
That's what I'm saying. I don't like it. It makes my dick so. It really does. But people are going to do it. But also on the flip side of that, because I was thinking, like, if you are in the community, do I have a problem like with someone who their everyday is not expressive in the genderqueer realm, but they're using it. They're a queer person who is leaning into genderqueer expression. I'm like, well, they're in the community, but I'm like, is that doing harm also?
Y'all are the
I
police.
feel like that's the latter. For me is fine, and I feel like that's what I've loosened up on since the last time we've had this conversation. Is that I do think that there's a space for people to just say, you know what, I don't know if this is my everyday, but I'm going to experiment with it. I think it's cool. I think it's fun, but
I want attention.
Okay, girl, I get it. It's linked to your self-esteem. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that you brought up the black thing, because it's just like what I'm more so wanting to like say that I don't fuck with is like the equivalent of a white person getting cornrows and then calling me a nigga when I'm not around.
Ooh.
That's more so what I'm getting at, where it's just like, are you experimenting with this? Sure, because you want to and you think it's interesting and maybe you think it's beautiful, but like this is something that historically has been associated with a marginalized group, and you hold these views towards that group, hateful views towards that group. That's when I think that's for me is when I'm just like non-starter. But for somebody who's just like, I think it's cute and I'm going to do it, I'm like, okay, like there's no way for me to be like, you have, unpure intentions. But I think if you're actively being hateful in your rhetoric and your treatment towards the group that actually lives and breathes this expression all the time, I think, there needs to be, someone needs to call a flag on the play. Is that what it is?
Call a flag on the play. You took yes.
Yeah.
You took me to a place though, because
right.
I was thinking about when we went to see Doja Cat, and when the niggas ain't shit came on, and all the white girls was saying, they were saying it.
I mean,
I think
they were saying they were like,
I
niggas
just think
ain't
we are.
Shit. I was like,
I think y'all are conflating.
I'm not gonna punch this white girl in the throat because there's a whole bunch of white people around me, and they're all singing niggas ain't shit. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with myself.
We moving on.
I was outnumbered.
All right. So back to our reflecting back on our icon, Sylvester.
Mm-hmm.
The black gay queen of disco once said, "Folks think we're strange, but they'll catch up." Beyond our own genderqueer expression, how can we help people better understand and respect genderqueer expression in society? Jordan.
I think that it starts with yourself. Like, I think that people just need to actively seek out these stories from people. I think that, just going back to the question again, I know we're moving on, but like, like it's not enough to just sort of like see it and be like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I think that also understanding the experience that comes along with it will help foster a level of understanding and compassion. And I truly think that is like, once you arm yourself with the history of things and with the education about like how these sort of different segments of society have been treated based off of how they express themselves, I feel like then you can understand how to engage with that community, how to protect that community, how to speak up when you're around your friends who are making a flippant joke about it. And you'll be like, actually, no, like, it's not just a fun joke.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually, I can attach it to something that I read or a story that I experienced or a big moment in history that I know was very pivotal for this group of people. And so I really think it's just about like arming yourself with education. I think education is going to give us more understanding and compassion, and that's going to help everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as it relates to this question, I'm thinking about expression existing on a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have your masculine tip of the scale, you have your feminine tip of the scale, you have everything in between. And I think that when people wake up and say you were never taught as a kid, like, don't cross your legs, boys don't like this, girls don't like that, X, Y, and Z. You wake up and you might feel more masculine. You wake up and you might feel more feminine. You wake up, you might feel cunt. You might feel you might feel butch. You might feel however you feel that day, and you get to decide how you want to express that. I wish that it was that plain and simple, and people can just decide like, oh yeah, today I felt like a heel. Today I felt like my sweats and my more baggy pants, or however that looks for you. And simply being able to do that, it's an individual choice at the end of the day that we get to decide as human beings on this earth. And where we get caught up is on what other people think, and people wanting to project what they think to be right or wrong on others. And so I think we would all, this is a recurring theme this season, mind the business that pays you. I would like to say mind the business that pays you, because if it's not harming you physically,
don't matter.
Don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, go on about your business. Go on about your day. Get your life. I'm getting mine.
Mm-hmm. I'll go back to where the question says, how do you help people better understand? And my response is that I don't. And I think part of it is in what Sylvester said. They think was strange, but they'll catch up. I go back to Alak, whose work I keep bringing up. And one of the quotes in their book, Beyond the Gender Binary, is be yourself until you make them uncomfortable. And I think that the idea of making people uncomfortable is the work. Like I've said it many times on this show that I think the worst thing a human being can be one that's focused on growth, one that's focused on understanding. It's comfortable. And I think that you just continue to be yourself and so pure to who that is, that person who maybe doesn't understand or maybe is a bit bigoted, they start to question their own values. They start to question themselves on how they view the world. And you get to keep fucking living. Like, and like that to me has been something that I think is important as Black people, as queer people, that we don't feel the need to always do the work of educating others. And sometimes it's about living in your truest expression of yourself so loudly, so boldly that they go, maybe I need to rethink myself. And then they're doing their own inner work. And to me, that's my answer.
Yeah.
And that is all the time we have this week. This season of Surface Level is presented by Moby, Mobilizing Our Brothers Initiative. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going. Let us know your thoughts and questions at surfacelevelpodcast.com. And remember, stay curious.